We'll wait for 2 minutes and we'll start. Yeah. Good morning. I think the time in your clock is and my clock is different. It seems. I came today pretty early. It seems 2-3 minutes. So you guys are coming late. Okay. Today chapters are biodiversity and human reproduction. Biodiversity, the remaining part, and human reproduction. Good morning. Good morning. What about others? Good morning. Steve, Ashraf, Janil, here or there. Okay, guys. Make sure one that you yeah, Ashraf. So make sure one thing that you should be regular to classes. Okay. So you can inform to your friends as well to be join the classes. Now we are all doing for your sake, right? The sake in the sense like for your good. So if you are not participating, there is no meaning for all these efforts. So please, motivate your friends to even join the classes. Okay, live interaction is very different from watching this video later. Okay, so please do talk to your friends regarding this, and I will also post a message in group that to be regular for classes as well as test. If you're regular for classes for all entire week and if you're not writing test, it's useless. Okay, we don't know where you are, so you please write the test as well and post the marks. Okay, that's it. I think we can carry on. We can start with our session. Sivakannan, yeah. Yeah. So okay. That's it. So we have Shamili, Vijay Mohan, Pungidi, Ritik Chitravanu, Vishalini, Ashya, Rupa, Srinivasan, Sridurga, Akshya, Anuvarshini, Ashraf, Sivakannan. That's it. Steve didn't come. Okay. So let's start. Today we're gonna finish this, biodiversity. In this last class, we were discussing about the numbers that was given by. It means that estimates, global estimates given by Robert May, right? So Robert May's global estimates can be asked as correct or incorrect statements, right? So what are the percentage? They may change the percentages also to confuse you, so you should be very much clear about those, right? So when it comes to numbers, this Robert May's global estimates are important when it comes to this lesson. Okay, that's why, because numbers are there and they are important, I kept this lesson for 2 days, so that twice you can read this lesson, right? And when it comes to patterns of biodiversity, for that matter, ecosystem and the biotic factors that are present inside an ecosystem do have certain pattern. They show or they display certain pattern, right? So biodiversity at first place. So last class we already discussed about what exactly a biodiversity means, right? So right from the it's like right from you know uh, macromolecules, within the cells to biomes. So this much variety is there, right? So variety in the living forms, life forms in an any habitat or biomes. That's what we are talking about. At the range of biome, we are talking about talking as biodiversity, and this biodiversity has certain patterns, right? So these patterns can be studied, and what are all exactly the patterns? So if you see the patterns of biodiversity, we have two different patterns we observe, right? One is you would have well known with this lesson actually. So when we talk about biodiversity and its patterns, we have two types of patterns that we talk about. So one is longitudinal gradients. It means here we are talking about the diversity, right? So how this diversity can be, how this diversity can be formed? What are all the patterns? So something it is longitudinal gradients. It means in the sense like here we are talking about the range of latitudinal gradients. Sorry, it's not longitudinal, it's latitudinal gradients. No, based upon the latitude, right? The biodiversity or tropics would vary. So that is what we are talking about. Okay, Janil, yeah, good morning. So we are talking about, you know, on the basis of latitude, how this diversity would vary. So what patterns does this, latitude may show? So based upon the latitude, how this species richness would vary, and what are the different trophic levels we can have it based upon these latitudes. That's what we are seeing pattern. So we're not talking about particular organism. We are talking about in a more broader perspective, right? So within this latitudes, from a range of latitudes, how this species richness would vary. So that is how we are trying to figure out the patterns. Here, pattern you should remember that pattern is something which repeated over a period of time, right? Even if humans has patterns, behavioral patterns, the how we behave when we get angry, when we cry, all these are all patterns, right? So be it any sort of situation, we display certain type of patterns. Like this biodiversity has two type of patterns. One is longitudinal gradients, right? So in this longitudinal gradients, species diversity decreases from equator to pole. So this is the equator, right? I don't have a ball in this. 1 minute, 1 minute. Okay. So if you consider this ball as an Earth, right? So this is whole biosphere, right? This is the whole biosphere, right? So here what's happening, this is the equator, right? From equator to poles, what happens is the species diversity or richness is decreasing. Why is that? Can you guess why? You don't need to guess, you can straight away answer also, because this chapter is already done in your botany syllabus, whole standard, right? Can you tell why the species richness or species diversity is decreasing right from the equator to the poles? Are you able to listen? Is my question clear? If you consider this ball as an uh, what do you say biosphere, right? So we have an equator and these are poles, and from equator to poles the biodiversity is decreasing. Why is that? Yeah, temperature. Very good. Sri Daksha, yeah, less sunlight, less productivity in poles. Okay, less. Anvarshini is saying temperature. Pungudi is saying it as temperature is too high or less as we move away from equator. Okay. Rupa, temperature. Arshia, due to temperature. Akshya, temperature abnormalities. Sri Daksha, predictable climates, climatic conditions. Right. So yeah, excellent guys. You're all constant predictable temperature. So yeah, so you guys got the concept here, right? So we are talking about the equatorial tropic regions, right? And then there are when the latitude range, right? So latitude based upon the latitude, the equator and the poles. What's happening here is uh, the relatively the tropics will have more time for evolutionary for evolution, in the sense like these organisms which are situated at the equator had more evolutionary time, so they may ask incorrect or correct statements in this latitudinal gradients concept. So this is the important aspect in this lesson and in this topic. It means patterns of biodiversity in the patterns of biodiversity, latitudinal gradients, and why is that the equatorial region has more species richness is the important question. So important concept you need to work on. So this equator has or tropics will have more species, right, than the temperate or polar regions. That's it. Temperate regions are again the less temperature regions, though they this term appears to be temperature, but temperature means less you know less temperature regions, and the polar is a freezing frost, right, freezing temperatures. So this is one of the reasons, that is tropics had more evolutionary time, at the same time relatively constant environment, right? So here we will have a relatively constant environment will be there in equatorial. At the same time, they receive more solar energy, contributes to the greater productivity. So exactly what Sri Daksha told, that productivity, right? Productivity is less when compared to equator has got more productivity because the sun, right? If you take this is a sun, right? So from the sun, the rays are hitting the equatorial diagonal way, and it gets more sunlight, so that the sunlight would be utilized by the producers, right? And then we have a GPP, NPP. That's how the species would go on. So this is one of the important aspect when it comes to latitudinal gradients. Is that clear, guys? So these are the three. I gave it in worksheet also. Already I gave it last week itself. So you would have got clear about it. So this is the important aspect of species richness. So in this topic, so this is the important aspect. And then second type is species related to area. Species and area relationship. So if the what exactly this species and area relationship? So Alexander von Humboldt gave this hyperbola equation, right? Hyperbolic equation saying that species richness is connected to area relationship. That's what. So species and area. So how this would get affected? We have got certain graph was given in your textbook, and that graph you need to go through once. In the sense like that hyperbola, right? So if the species, when area is increasing, species richness would increase, right? So that is one of the case. So, so in this, what exactly they talked about is species richness increases with increasing in explored area, but there is certain limit. So after certain limit, what happens is the curvature will start. Okay, so it will not be always steep, right? So why this curvature is that the limiting factors. It means it would be limited. right? So this graph has to be once you have to be checked, especially what do you say, uh, the equation they have given for this logarithmic scale. Okay, so with a straight line, we are actually comparing this hyperbola, as simple as that. So you have to go through this equation once. So this is two types. That is, species richness is depend upon latitude. Latitude at the same time, species richness is depend upon the area explored. It is this area explored by species area relationship given by Alexander von Humboldt. So this is quite an important thing. So when the species, when the area increases, directly it's proportional, but at certain limit, it stops. It comes to the normal. It means no more further species restriction will be there. How much ever the area increases. So there is a limitation for that also. So you need to be working on it. So when it comes to the next one is it clear, guys? Are you able to follow? Is it making sense what I'm discussing right now? I'm going a little slow also. Everyone should be active, guys. Are you able to follow, ma? Hey, Jenil, you have to call your boys, okay? Whoever attending NEET classes, if they are in group, now, just inform them once. Ashraf, your hostel batch. Sanjay, Suryash, Jenil, your batch. Okay? Okay, da. Fine. So let's continue. That is the next aspect what we are going to discuss is simple importance of species diversity. Here in this lesson we have got few scientist names also, so you have to make a tabular form. Scientist name, what are its their contribution. So when we talk about first one, what we say, we have got estimates, right? So that were given by Robert Mays. So Robert Mays global estimates, and then Humboldt, right? Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt, what he have given, species area relationship he have given, and then David Tillman. So what, according to David Tillman, what exactly what he is describing is he's trying to explain about the an importance of species diversity. Okay, so according to David Tillman, this plots with more species shows less year-to-year variation in total biomass. It means here they are talking about area, right? So they are talking about area and with relation to their annual, annual biomass. So why is this species diversity so important? Right, so that is one of the important aspect that already the Sridaksha told that productivity. So species diversity as at the producers trophic level, they contribute for the productivity. So that is one of the important factor, one of the important aspect for species diversity. We already talked about the biotic component. Within the biotic components, species numbers, diversity, distribution also affects the primary productivity, right? So this is how we have to connect the concept. That chapter is over, so we no need to think about it. Don't do like this, okay? It means like many people will tend to forget after reading that chapter. There won't be any connecting. They will people sometimes we don't connect things. But see, now we are talking about species diversity and we are connecting to the ecosystem because these are all ecological aspects. You need to connect that. Okay, so here productivity do affect because of the species diversity, right? And then we have got reward Popper hypothesis also, right? So in this lesson we so in this concept, we have to focus on the scientist names and their contribution. Revert Popper hypothesis, what actually he have talked about. So he gave some analogy, right, to make people understand about how important that biodiversity is, right? So he used this certain analogy, right? For example, airplane analogy, right? At the same time, Paul Ehrlich, what he have proposed, or what are the important aspects he talked about? Key species, right? So these are the important aspects you need to touch in this lesson, especially importance of biodiversity, scientist name and their contribution. Okay, and then coming to the next aspect, that is loss of biodiversity. So when we talk about biodiversity loss, right, how this biodiversity loss affects, impacts of loss of biodiversity is where you can get it as correct or incorrect statements. Okay, so these impacts of loss of biodiversity, for example, if biodiversity, for example, only one type of plants are there, so it obviously affects the plant production, right? The plant production would decline. At the same time, uh, it cannot really sustain certain drought conditions, because only one variety is there. This entire ecosystem may not, environment may not really sustain certain perturbations such as droughts, right? So this is one of the impact that loss of diversity has on environment. At the same time, another one is plant productivity would decrease, obviously. At the same time, water use and pest and disease cycles. So it actually affects, it shows a variable effects on ecosystem when the biodiversity would loss. So this is one of these are the three different aspects of impacts of loss of biodiversity. And here we have got certain numbers here, right? At the same time, we have got some some organisms, plants or animals who got extinct. So whichever already covered in your NCRT, you should be practicing on it, especially the red list. Okay, red list, right? IUCN red list. According to that, what are the different? How many number of species got extinct and over a period of 500 years, that you need to focus on, right? And you have to focus on examples as well. So they may ask you that dodo is there, for example. Is a dodo is it an extinct one, or is it a vulnerable one? So it is about to extinct, or it is facing a threat, or they are threatened species. So they may confuse with this terminology. So you should be very much pakka. You should be very much aware of what are the species that are covered in your NCRT or were extinct. Is that clear? So when it comes to loss of biodiversity, these are the important aspects. And then causes of biodiversity loss also, especially the evil quarter, is important aspect. So how do this biodiversity loss would occur? So habitat loss and fragmentation. How do these habitats would lose? For example, how this Amazon rainforest is being getting affected, right? So these are all the aspects that this causes of biodiversity losses you need to focus on, and mostly they may ask you in the form of correct or incorrect statement. Especially this ecology unit, they will be asking more in the form of either column A, column B, match the following, or they may give correct or incorrect statements. Pick the correct statements, pick the incorrect statements, etc. So you should be very much clear about each statement you are reading, as well as the question while you are attempting. So for example, again, war exploitation leads to the biodiversity loss. Exploitation means at the same time using certain plants for repeatedly, right? If we collect certain species, that over exploitation also leads to biodiversity loss. And then alien species invasion, right? You would have wrote several tests on this lesson. Alien species, why we call alien species, who gave these terms, what are the examples of it, right? So what exactly this alien species or what you need to focus on? So both plant as well as animal, you have to focus on at least one or two examples. Is that clear? So in the water, in the aquatic organisms like Iconia, right? Water lanthana or Iconia, or you have got catfish. This is how when these species are introduced into certain ecosystem, they take over that, and the biodiversity would eventually uh, lose. So one or two plant examples and one or two animal examples you need to focus on. And co-extinction, in the co-extinction, they may give that in this loss causes of biodiversity loss, right? So they may give column A different reasons. For example, habit loss and fragmentation, over exploitation, alien species invasion, co-extinction, and they give different examples and they ask you to match the following, right? Match in the sense it's not that easy, like not 6 standard match the following, right? So it would be like confusing and they may jumble the entire sequence, so you should be very much careful about it. So next aspect is biodiversity conservation. So is that clear, guys? Are you able to follow? Janil, thanks, Ra. Is that clear so far? Are you able to follow? Okay. Yeah, 4 steps, sir. Okay. Yeah. So this is one of the important aspect. Okay. Okay, fine. So post-step is nothing but Niharika. Okay, fine. So let's move. Uh, let's see that the next aspect of this lesson is biodiversity conservation. So now we are talking about, so far what we talked about is the biodiversity, right? What is biodiversity? At the same time, how this species richness is created, right? What are the different patterns of biodiversity? We talked about levels of biodiversity. We talked about numbers, right? On global estimates, for example, and then we talked about patterns of biodiversity, latitudinal, and we have talked about species and area relationship, and then we talked about importance of species diversity. Why is it so important for environment or ecosystem? And then we talked about loss of biodiversity and its causes and its impacts, right? And then now we have to talk about, now we are very much aware of all these aspects. Now how do we conserve this biodiversity? So for conservation of biodiversity, what we do is like we have certain you know reasons to conserve the biodiversity, right? So what are the three categories? For example, I gave it in worksheet itself. That is categories. One is narrowly, you know, utilitarian arguments. So if you see that we put this biodiversity conservation reasons into three arguments. One is ethical, one is broad argument, at the same time narrowly utilitarian arguments and broadly utilitarian arguments and ethical arguments. So these are the three arguments, and these three arguments can be asked as correct or incorrect. So for example, what is this narrowly utilitarian arguments? For example, human derive economic benefit from nature, such as food, firewood, fiber, construction materials. So it means, so these are the uh, we may think that in the narrow perspective, we think that okay, we have to conserve this biodiversity because human is getting benefited, right? So there is certain, it is very much limited to human. So not really considering about other organisms. When we talk about broader sense, right? Broader sense. So biodiversity has many ecosystem services. For example, Amazon forests are there. They are lungs of the planet. So this is the much broader perspective of conservation of biodiversity. And then ethical arguments. So we talked about intrinsic value, right? That is intrinsic growth value in the organisms and population, right? R value in the exponential and logistic growth curves in organisms and population. So ethical arguments focus on this intrinsic value, right? So it means we have a moral duty to care for their well-being. It means as an humans, right, it's a moral connection to the other organism species to really care about their intrinsic growth value. So that's how the ethical argument. So these three arguments can be asked as match the following, or they may ask as incorrect and correct statements, right? Yeah. And then next, so how do we conserve? So these are the three important aspects that we are talking about the conservation, right? And then how do we conserve? In situ conservation, on site itself we can conserve, right? And on site conservation, how do we do? So in this, in situ conservation is very important when it comes to the different conservation, parks, landscapes, natural monuments, right? These are all the important examples you need to cover. Sanctuaries which organisms would cover, would come there. Biosphere reserves, examples, right? Sacred forests, right? So what are these? Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan. So these are all very much important examples you need to practice at any cost. So in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is off site, right? Not on a particular on the site itself, but we off site conservation is called ex situ conservation. And then we right, and then we talk about different examples, like for example ex situ conservation is something, a conservation of organisms outside their habitats. For example, genetic resource centers, zoological parks. So we will take up those organisms and we put them in our certain conditions we create there, and we will try to protect them. So this is ex situ conservation. And then hotspots and their examples. In gold, how many hotspots are there? 34 hotspot. Endemism, what is that? Species confined only to specific region. Endemism. For example, endemics, pandemic. So pan America, pan India means everywhere. But here we are talking about endemic. So the biology is that endemic, something which is related to which is located to certain, or it is situated or it is confined to certain area, like endemic diseases. But pandemic is something worldwide, right? So here we have endemism when it comes to hotspots also, species richness located to certain certain areas, certain confined to certain region. So what are the hotspots? And at the same time, 34 hotspots are present in gold, and how many hotspots are present in India? There are 3, and what are those? You need to study. And then finally, international efforts to conserve biodiversity. What are all the summits, seminars that you need to follow? So with this, we completed this lesson, and let's move to the next next lesson, zoology part, that is human reproduction. And human reproduction, we need not talk much about it, because we have enough idea about this lesson. But still, we'll have a minor discussion on this. So it's a 10:30. Okay, is that clear, guys? Shall we start the zoo? So when it comes to this human reproduction and biodiversity, with respect to need is concerned, right? In academics, human reproduction is more important than this biodiversity. But in need, biodiversity is more important. That's what I gave this much time to biodiversity and human reproduction. Just like that, you can study. I have that much confidence on you guys. Okay, so let's move to the Jew part, right? That is in human reproduction, right? We talk about the male reproductive system and female reproductive system, and what are the sex organs, primary sex organs and secondary, sex organs, right? So what are the especially the accessory ducts? So ductal system, right? The ducts. What are the ducts that are present, right? So how do they conduct the sperms? It means through these ducts, how these sperms would go. That always we write that flow chart, right? So from the starting synthesis region to the ejaculation, how the journey of the sperm takes place is what? The conduction of sperm. For example, it includes this accessory ducts include radi-testis, vas efferentia, epididymis, and vas deferens. So, how these sperms would move from what is the direction of it, what is the journey of it is especially very important in this human what do you say male reproductive system. At the same time, Leydig cells and their location and their function, right? At the same time, interstitial cells, nothing, what are where exactly they are there and what are their functions. Seminiferal tubules, their location and their functions, right? Spermatogonia, its location, its functions, its ploidy, whether it is a diploid or haploid, also ploidy is also very much important. Is that clear? So next we talk about accessory glands. When we talk about glands are utmost important because they protect the sperm and they nurture the sperm. At the same time, even right from the male reproductive tract to the female reproductive tract after the ejaculation also. So the important aspect we need to focus here is that the functions of these accessory glands like prostate gland, seminal vesicles, and Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland. So what exactly their function? So you can put it as a table, this glands, and then so again they may ask you mismatch. So that's how you need to focus on this accessory glands and accessory ducts. You guys will get confused, so you should be very much careful when we talk about ducts and glands. So glands are something which produces some secretions, like which lubricates penis. At the same time, acidity, is to counteract the acidity of the vagina. This produces alkalinity. Alkalinity is something which is done by the accessory glands. Prostate cancer is one of the aspect you can link to. Prostate gland, seminal vesicles, and Cowper's glands, which are otherwise called as bulbourethral glands. So don't get confused with the glands. And so this is the area you need to spend at least 5-10 minutes, 10-15 minutes on, separately making a table, and you have to read. Otherwise, you will go wrong. Even though you think that you have given exam, there is a point of confusion here. Coming to female reproductive tract, right? Here in female reproductive tract, what are the important aspects are, ovary and their functions, especially when we talk about ducts of an female reproductive tract. We will talk about oviducts or fallopian tubule. So this fallopian tubule, what are the parts? I always show this, right? So if you take this is an fimbriae, infundibulum, and then you have so this is how it looks like. So two oviducts will be there, fallopian tubules will be there, where they are very much situated near the ovaries, so that they can catch up the ovum. So right from fimbriae to the where the point of entry into the oviduct, the sperm entry to the oviduct, you need to be very much careful. That is the term infundibulum angula isthmic region. And what is the site of fertilization according to NCERT textbook also you need to be following. And uterine and its layers and their functions, both hormonal functions when it comes to during pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization events, and uterus, you need to connect like this. So perimetrium, myometrium, endometrium, what are their functions during menstrual cycle, before pregnancy, after pregnancy. So this is how you need to focus on. Okay. And the third aspect of female reproductive system is axonal genitalia, like mons pubis, at the same time vestibule, at the same time this labia majora and minora. So what are all its physical what do you say, physical characteristics, right? So this is not much important, but you try to just once read about it. And when it comes to mammary glands, this mammary glands, right from the external nipple to the internal mammary, mammary tissue. For example, the ducts. So again, what is the travel? Where exactly this milk is produced, and what is the journey of this? So that you need to be focusing. Okay. So this lactiferous ducts. Okay, guys. Yeah, and then we talk about we'll be talking about gametogenesis. In academics itself we done the numericals also, right? Spermatogenesis, where it starts, where it ends. Spermatogonia, that is 2 and the 46 chromosomes would undergo meiosis. First meiotic different, first mitosis differentiation occurs, and then they form primary spermatocytes, and then they undergo first meiotic division and then second meiotic division. Likewise, we need to focus on the ploidy of it. Ploidy, right? We have to be very much careful about the primary spermatocyte is a diploid or haploid. Secondary spermatocyte is a diploid or haploid. Like that, even oogonia is diploid or haploid. Primary oocyte is haploid or diploid. This ploidy is extremely important when it comes to this gametogenesis. Nothing more than that. At the same time, role of hormones. What is the role of hormones during the gametogenesis? For example, GnRH, LH, how they FSH will act on or producing androgens, and how this would result in spermiation, as maturation, etc. You need to be carefully reading. And sperm structure, they may give directly the diagram, and they may ask any question based upon it. Ovum and sperm structures, you should be extremely careful about it. So in the similar lines, oogenesis. In oogenesis, the number of ovum produced at the fetal level is very much important, right? 60 to 80,000, right? 60,000 to 80,000, right? You can remember as your first term salary as a fresher, you may get that salary. So you should be focusing on that. So especially these numbers in oogenesis. Okay, and then we know about oogenesis, this primary oocyte, secondary oocyte formation, and then ploidy is extremely important. When it comes to fertilization, right? So in the fertilization aspects, we will be talking about different layers of the ovum, and then what are its functions. Zona pellucida, corona radiata. So these are the important aspects you need to focus on. So most importantly in this is menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is very much aware. You guys are very much aware of this menstrual cycle. We have extensively covered lot of times. We revised on this also. Especially the days and the phases. Days are important. They may give follicular phase at 14 days. No, it's not. Ovulation period as the first day. No. So you should be. They may confuse you with the days and the phases. So you should be relating to the days. Okay, first 4 days what happens? Next 10 days what happens? 14th day what happens? After fertilization what happens? If fertilization is not there, what happens to the ovarian events? What happens to the uterine events? What happens to the pituitary events? And these are the aspects you need to cover at any cost. So in this, days and phases are extremely important. You no need to write anything, right? So you should be focusing on the phase and its associated dates. Especially you have this NCERT textbook, focus on it. Menstrual phase, follicular phase, luteal phase, right? So within the follicular phase, ovulatory phase, that is 14, right? And then luteal phase. At the same time, each phase has got hormonal functions. How does, for example, if it is a secretory phase, It means when the egg is fertilized, right? So when egg is fertilized, obviously the progesterone will be produced. Why? Because it's a corpus luteum, right? Corpus luteum formation would be there, right? Can you guys tell how this corpus luteum formed? From where? Within the ovary. Corpus luteum formed from? You guys are there. Everyone should be participating, guys. Corpus luteum. Reminiscence of graphene follicle. Yeah. So after fertilization, what happens? This corpus luteum would be maintained, right? So this corpus luteum is formed from the reminiscence of graphene follicle, mature graphene follicle. Once the mature graphene follicle would release the ovum, right? So for example, this is the ovum. So when it releases the ovum, so this graphene follicle, mature graphene follicle would develop into corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum eventually has certain important hormone which actually acts on the uterus as well. So those are the important aspects you need to focus on. So when it comes to next aspect is fertilization and implantation. Remaining, what about others, guys? Wake up, wake up. Are you guys sleeping or what? Yeah, Arshia, correct. What about others? My scientist, are you there? Hey, Ashraf, Janil, Rupa, Vishalini, Kritik, Kongadi, Vijay Mohan, Shamli, Akshya. Where are you guys? Answer the question. Mutula didn't come today. Janil, what are ovary or graphene follicle? What do you mean by ovary or graphene follicle? They within the ovary, Nora, graphene follicles are there. What do you mean by ovary or graphene follicle? Remaining, do respond. It's a very simple question. So without response, how can we move forward? How do we know whether your guys are there or not? Okay. So the next aspect that we have to talk about is fertilization and implantation. So once this fertilization is done and it has to the embryo, the zygote formation takes place and it forms an embryo and that embryo needs to be implanted, right? So how this implantation and what are the hormones are necessary for maintaining this embryo, and what are the divisions occurs, and what are the different stages of embryo in that embryogenesis, right? And those aspects are very much important. For example, gastrula, right? So gastrula, right? And what are the different germ layers does it has? So these are the important aspects you need to cover in this, fertilization and implantation, right? Especially the trophoblast, right? For example, in the blastocyst, how these blastomeres arranged, and if they are as an trophoblast, right? And if you see this zygote undergoes, mitotic division or cleavage. First mitotic division in the zygote, we call it as cleavage, and it results in 2 cells, and then 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and then 16. So 16 daughter cells called blastomeres, and this embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres are called morula. So these are the stages, and the cell numbers are significant in the case of fertilization and implantation events. Coming to the next and final aspect is pregnancy and embryonic development, right? The lactation would be the final aspect, of course. But here in this pregnancy and embryonic development, you need to focus on the hormones that actually involves during this pregnancy. At the same time, what are the gestation period of human, dogs, cats, elephants? If you see the longest gestation period you will be observing in the elephants, that is 21 months. For 21 months, the young one would be bared in the uterus, and then the development would be taken care. The hormones that are HCG, right? Human chorionic gonadotropin, right? And then human placental lactogen, HPL. What are those characters you need to once focus? So then you can come to the changes in embryo during pregnancy. So in first trimester, what are the organs formed? In the second trimester, what are the organs formed? In the end of the 9 months, and after the 9 months, the baby is ready to get delivered, right? So then we talk about parturition and lactation. So what is parturition? Is nothing but the labor in the general sense, and it is nothing but process of giving birth to, and reflex is also very much important. So, right. So at the same time, you need to focus on the colostrum and antibodies, type of antibodies present in colostrum. So with this chapter is done. Yeah, Kritika, correct. Graph and polymer. So with this, we completed this chapter also, human reproduction. These are the areas you need to focus, right? Especially the when it comes to this embryogenesis, number of the cells and stages. Likewise, these are the aspects you need to focus while you're reading your NCERT. As simple as that. Is that clear, guys? Everyone followed? Yeah. So today what you have to do is you have to complete these 2 lessons, right? So biodiversity you would have already read the last class, so that today you can spend some more time on human reproduction also. But human reproduction, these are the only important aspects. So when we talk about from the beginning, I talked only about certain important areas in this lesson, right? So first focus, finish it. This is not academic test that you need to write sentences and all, but you need to read line by line, so that more than human reproduction, you will be having biodiversity has more examples, right? So you should be focusing and giving value for both the lessons. So that is it for today, guys. At the same time, you please do like this video. At the same time, subscribe, and you can share as much as possible to your friends as well, so that it can come into the Google thing also, so that everyone can benefit. At the same time, you please do attend tests. Take tests seriously from this week. Okay. Without writing tests, there is no use for preparing. Also, you have to self-evaluate. You should be self-conscious about your own, test taking also. So you please take care of that. Today I will put a message also. So the way you are taking test and the posting result also plays a major role. Okay, you should be genuinely posting also, taking tests and result also. We hope, I hope that you are posting in that way. So please make sure that if you have any doubts, reach us at any point of time. So with this, we will wind up today's session and we'll meet tomorrow. Okay, and I really congratulate, appreciate everyone that you guys are really participating very well, and at least you have posted. Though it is late, the next from the next exam onwards, within 1 hour, try to post the result. Okay, try to post the your final total marks. Okay, so don't drag it for 2 hours, 3 hours. Okay, within 1 hour you can post. Is that clear? So any doubts you can ask me, you can reach me at any point of time. Yeah. So I really appreciate that you are taking this test seriously, and this is the first week. So I am not putting any certain stringent rules. So from this week, we will be focusing more upon more efficient way. Also, we will try to do. Okay, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow, and take care. Be safe. Be home. Be at home and be safe. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed this class. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Take care. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.